Good evening and welcome to the December 14th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. The meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference and is also being broadcast on cable channel 15 and streamed online by FCTV. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be cognizant of what you say, how you say it, what can be seen and heard in your background. I'd like to thank our staff for your continued support to this commission and your diligence assisting applicants. At the moment, we're missing 2 commissioners. However, we have a quorum, so we're moving forward. Remind you guys that for commenting, I'll call on each of you at the appropriate time. Let's refrain from speaking over each other. Also, all votes will be done by roll call. When I call your name, please state your name and your vote, even if you've made the motion or the second. To our public participants, at any time during this meeting, you may enter any comments or questions via the chat function. At the appropriate time, they will be read into the record. The link and further instructions are located on the agenda. Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022 regarding COVID-19 allows for full public participation. Therefore, if you'd like to be heard on a specific hearing, let us know via the chat function. Then at the appropriate time, I'll call for public comment. When you are selected, you will be moved into the hearing as a participant. As such, you must have your video enabled, be succinct and respectful of others. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes each. Regarding RDAs, under a request for determination of applicability, the applicant is asking the commission to determine if the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and/or the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw apply to their proposed project. A negative determination is that, A negative determination is that the provisions of the Act and/or the bylaw do not apply. Therefore, the project can proceed as proposed. However, a positive determination means that the provisions of the Act and/or the bylaw do in fact apply. Therefore, the project will require a notice of intent application. Therefore, as an applicant, you'll want to hear a negative determination. And for the benefit of anyone waiting for a particular hearing tonight, and so that you're not waiting unnecessarily, the following hearings are expected to be continued. 79 Meadow Neck Road, 100 Waterside Drive, and number 4 Boyer Road. And let the record show that the last 2 commissioners have joined the party. First up, vote minutes, November 30, 2022.
I'd move approval of the minutes. Patton.
Carla Hawk, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as submitted. Betsy. Courtney.
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien eye.
Moore.
Carla Hawk's eye.
Melissa.
Hartog eye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you, Kristen. Next up are requests for a continuance under a notice of intent. And if I get these out of order, too bad. I got the new agenda late. First up, Russell Agrusa, 79 Meadow Neck Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct 2 additions, enlarge the existing deck, and install mitigation plantings. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant would like to continue the hearing until January 11th. So moved, Carla Hawks.
Gladfelter, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this till January 11th. Any questions or comments? Melissa?
Just wondering why. This is
We met with Jack today and we had some questions on the plan that he was going to present tonight, and he just felt that he'd rather address our concerns before coming back to the board.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Motion and a second is on the table to continue this till January 11th. Betsy?
Gladfelter eye.
Courtney?
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Melissa,
Red Dog, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until January 11th. Next up, Michael and Susan Herring, 100 Waterside Drive, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to remove the existing deck, construct an addition and with a deck, relocate the existing hot tub, remove the existing shed, and construct a new shed, and install dry wells and mitigation plantings. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Tom would like a continuance until January 4th. He's still tweaking his plan. So moved, Carlo Hawks.
Bird, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this until January 4th. Any questions or comments? All right, Betsy?
Aye. Gladfelter, aye.
Thank you. Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Melissa?
Red Dog, aye.
Steve?
Aye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this hearing until January 4th. Next up, request for a continuance to amend an existing order of conditions. First up, the Christine M. Moynihan Trust, 4 Boyer Road, formerly 335 Shore Street, Falmouth, Mass. Request to amend the order of conditions for Mass DEP number 25-4541 to permit the after-the-fact installation of drip strips in lieu of dry wells, the removal of gravel, and the installation of mitigation. Jen?
Yes, the applicant's requesting a continuance until January 4th. So moved, Carlo Hawks.
Bird, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this until January 4th. Let's see.
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Melissa?
Red Dog, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until January 4th. Next up, request for a continuance under an enforcement order. Susan and Gerald Lieber, 101 Lakeshore Drive, number 16 Lakeshore Drive North, and 0 Lakeshore Drive North. Map parcel number 22-04-027-004A, Falmouth, Mass. Unpermitted removal of vegetation and construction of retaining walls within conservation jurisdiction. Jen?
Alyssa? Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, the applicant is requesting a continuance until February 15th.
So moved, Carlo Hawks. Thank you.
Second, Gladfelter.
Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second to continue this until February 15th. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Melissa?
Red Dog, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this matter until February 15th. Next up, request for determination of applicability. First up, Gregory and Michelle Kozik, 25 Moonpenny Lane, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to remove saplings and vista prune according to FWR 10.18 10B. Ms. Bergeron.
Staff is recommending a +4 under the state and bylaw. These area boundaries are not confirmed, and I can elaborate on that.
Please.
Yes.
Or not.
So the staff that, the saplings in question are actually were called out to be isolated for continued growth back in their amended order of conditions in 2018. It was something that was called out during the hearings and they were meant to remain on the property. So that's why staff is upholding the previous requirements of that permit. So as we typically do with a positive recommendation from the staff, we're hoping that the commission will continue the hearing, go visit the site for yourself and take a look at the saplings. What I will do is send you guys a copy of this RDA application, as well as the old plan and orders of conditions, so you're fully aware of what was previously approved and not approved. All of the saplings are tagged for easy visuals when you're out at the site. And I think that covers it.
Thank you for that.
I'll move a positive.
Carlo Hawk, second.
Wait a minute. I believe what's on the table is to continue this so that we can go out and look at it. Is that
that's
correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, sorry, I'll withdraw my motion.
I'll withdraw my second. Make a motion to continue this till
January 4th.
January 4th.
I'll second. Gladfelter.
All right. We have a motion and a second to continue this until January 4th. Any other questions or comments? Alyssa, thank you for the explanation. We're voting. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawk's aye.
Melissa,
Sorry, Freitag, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until January 4th. Excuse me. Next up are continued hearings under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. As a reminder, public commenting is limited to 3 minutes. So I encourage you to stay within the purview of this board, which are the rules and regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw and how they pertain to a particular application. The chair reserves the right to stop any commenting that is disparaging or inconsequential to the hearing. First up, Peter and Valerie Mazzina, 127 Sherwood Drive, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to conduct invasive species management to construct and maintain a pier, ramp, and float in Great Pond, and to request a variance from FWR 10.16 1D1. Jen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have promoted Mark Gibb from Cape and Islands Engineering to continue to present his project. Mark and I promoting Brian Wall and Mike Ball as well, or?
Yes.
Okay.
And
All right, before we start, to clarify, the quorum excludes Maury. Nothing personal. Mr. Dibb, you're up, sir.
And I believe the owner is also on, Valerie Messina, if you could promote her as well.
Sure.
And I'm going to actually let Brian Wall start the presentation. Thank you.
Uh-oh. I think I promoted the wrong person. Nope, right person. Okay.
Brian, you
Mr.
can go
Wall,
ahead.
you're up, sir.
Yeah, I'm
Thank
sorry, I just had to unmute. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Thank you for having us here tonight. I represent the applicants, Peter and Val Messina, and with me, as you can see, is Mark Dibb from Cape and Islands Engineering. Also with us, Michael Ball from the consulting firm of Marsh Matters. And I believe that the applicants are on, I see them now actually too, Mr. and Mrs. Messina. This is an application for permission to construct a 4-foot by 242-foot dock at 127 Sherwood Drive. Also before the commission tonight is a request for a variance to exceed the 100-foot length limitation. We had a full on August 31st, and we requested a continuance in order to consider some design changes, some additional mitigation, and also to respond to comments from the commission and staff, including but not limited to the comment that was in the staff report that suggested that the diminishing salt marsh that's observed in the area is the result of other docks in the area. And so tonight you'll hear from Mark Dibb, who will review the changes to the project. Then we'd like to turn it over to Michael Ball to discuss marsh matters. And then finally, I'll address a few more comments on the variants that I addressed the last time. And we are aware of the commission, so we'll move right along if the chair will allow us to. So having said that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Dibb.
Good evening again, Mark Dibb with Cape and Islands Engineering. Would it be okay to share my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so what I was going to do was go over through the technical revisions to the plans, which were based on responding to comments as from the previous hearings, as well as a staff report just received at the beginning of this week. One change to the plan, or one addition to the plan, is a surveyor stamp as requested. A second revision to the plan is maintaining 6 feet height across from the bottom of the structure across any marsh areas. This was as a comment from DMF that we were able to incorporate. The next change was relocating the kayak racks from in near the beginning of the pier out to towards the end of the fixed pier. An additional change we did was to add some additional mitigation. What we've shown is 2 sets of mitigation. One is the required area of mitigation from a previous filing, DEP file number 25-4529, which was required to install 655 square feet of mitigation. What was actually installed at the time of mitigation, at the time of installation, was approximately 1,180 square feet of mitigation. And what we're planning to do, if this project is approved, is to leave that mitigation in place, which is the darker green. What that is doing is going from about a 20-foot natural buffer from the top of the bank to about almost a 40-foot average natural buffer, if we allow that to stay as additional mitigation for this pier project. The other item on the plan is based on a staff comment about water depth. It was noted that the water depth at the end of the pier, there's a sounding shot of 3.1. What that does is it meets one of the design criteria for the pier, which is that the depth at the end of the dock shall have a minimum of 3 feet, which is section 1D. But it also needs to meet the section 1H, which is general requirements, and which is maintaining a depth of 3 feet from a bottom of a float. So we are proposing float stops at 36 inches. So we have that required depth separation to the pier. Those are the main plan changes. I think I'm going to hand it over to Michael Ball to stop sharing to...
Mark, I'm sorry, before you do, would you clarify that mitigation?
Okay, so let me get back to the screen. I'm actually I have ready in front of me so this was the original House proposal. I'll try to zoom in. It was required to provide 655 square feet of mitigation, which was these 2 mitigation areas. But what was actually installed was almost 1,200 square feet of mitigation. This is an as-built survey
Okay.
of,
Okay.
so, we're proposing to, instead of removing it and replacing the lawn back, we're proposing to keep that. So then what this final plan shows is the difference between, so this light green was what was required under the previous permit, and the darker, actually both greens is what was installed. So that difference
Okay.
is an increase of over 500 square feet.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Hi, this is Mike. Can you hear me? Did I unmute successfully?
You did,
Yes.
Mike.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Mike
Please
Ball.
turn your video on.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Let me, there we
Thank
go.
you.
All right. Sorry. Good evening. Mike Ball from Marsh Meadows Environmental. I'm here on behalf of the Messinas. On behalf of them, Attorney Wall requested that I do a couple of things, accomplish a couple of tasks. One was review site conditions. A second was to review the project plans. Third, to review the staff report that was submitted to the commission. And the fourth was to prepare a document summarizing my observations and providing an opinion specific to site conditions and in the staff comments. So you should have received and reviewed a letter from me dated December 6th. So the purpose of providing staff and the commission the info in my letter was in part really to point out that the loss of low salt marsh habitat, which is a concern in this matter, is definitely occurring in very many locations up and down the coast and on the Cape, as I mentioned in my letter. This discovery of marsh loss is based on past and ongoing studies that have and are continuing to collect data, and that these studies are finding that there are several reasons for salt marsh loss. And so I think in review of staff comments, my opinion was that making a statement, a definitive statement, as there's clear evidence that salt marsh at this location is a direct result of dock usage is I think really just a little far too difficult to back up in my view. In a consulting capacity, I've worked on and currently working on a number of overmarsh projects, whether the boardwalks to cross high marsh or piers proposed to cross both high and low marsh. And it seems to me that if a homeowner is, on the water, is definitely going to get to the water in order to access it for recreation. These elevated structures are being designed in such a manner and with such specialized materials that I do think these structures, which are built to allow for ample light penetration and have relatively small support structure footprints, that they afford protection to not only the marsh, but potentially to other abutting vegetated resource areas, such as coastal bank and intertidal flats. So that's really a summary of my opinion. I know this is a marsh area that has seen some significant loss over several decades, as evidenced by the aerial photos that are provided online. Yeah, with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the information I provided in my letter.
Thank you, sir.
And if I could suggest, Mr. Chairman, maybe before we turn it over to comments, if I could give my comments and then we could have a general back and forth, if that's okay.
Or go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the last time that we were before you in August, I gave a full presentation on the variance, and I'm not going to do that again. I know it's in writing, and I know that everyone's listened the last time, but I would like to highlight and emphasize a couple of points and refresh the commission's memory on a couple of points. The first of which is the area where the dock is proposed has several other docks in the vicinity, including on the left and on the right, or the south or the north. 3 of those docks were approved with variances. And so we saw those as examples to be emulated. And we deliberately designed and modeled this project to follow those other projects. The second point I want to make concerns the mitigating measures and to refresh the commission's recollection as to what's being proposed. The variance criteria does have a section that says mitigating measures must be proposed that will allow the project to be conditioned so as to contribute to the protection of resource areas. So we're proposing 4 types of mitigation. The first is the design of the dock itself. So as the commission sees on the plan, this is not a typical timber style pier, but it's an aluminum pier that has fewer piles than an equivalent timber pile pier. And so our contention is that the design itself mitigates for the impacts from the pier. The second is we're proposing a contribution to the Shellfish Fund of $2,400. And our contention is that this will improve the town's shellfish resource area as well as water quality. Third, you might recall the last time we talked about the 33 square feet of Phragmites abatement that's being proposed. Technically speaking, we withdraw that from this notice of intent, but the reason for that is a technical procedural reason. And Mark Dibb could help me out if I say this wrong. Under the revised DEP regulations, there has to be a different type of application file that's called an environmental restoration NOI. And the applicant is still willing to do the Phragmites abatement, but would have to file separately. And so if the commission is inclined to approve this project, we would be pleased to have as a condition on the order of conditions, a requirement that the applicant apply for and obtain permission to do the Phragmites removal prior to any work being done under this particular permit. And fourth, as you heard Mr. Dibb talk about it in his presentation, we're proposing some additional mitigation that was not mentioned last time, and that's the 532 square feet of mitigation plantings in the buffer zone. And our contention here on those is twofold. Number one, the obvious thing is that it will improve the buffer zone by having it naturally vegetated. And as the commission is well familiar with 10.18, one of the regulatory objectives of the buffer zone regulations is to have a fully naturally vegetated zone A. And so by proposing this additional 532 square feet, it furthers that particular regulatory interest. The third point I want to make is regarding the hardship. There was some discussion last time about the fact that the other pier applications had prior existing piers and that somehow that tied into the hardship. And we respectfully disagree. What we contend is that the hardship analysis really has to do with the property itself, and that in those other 3 applications, by improving the old docks with new docks, it actually improved the environment. So if you look at the characteristics of the property, I'm just going to go back to one of the permits. This is the Sheridan property, which is one of the abutting piers. And this is the finding that the commission made when it made the decision in that case. And it's finding number 5. This is part of the package that I submitted to you. And this is what it says. The applicant suffers a hardship in several ways. The applicant's lot has an unusual shoreline. There is a marsh island just offshore, and the slope from shoreward outward is extremely shallow, necessitating a length of 255 feet to meet the Bravo standards of 1016 for the mooring pool to be located in a depth at mean low water of 3 feet or greater. Finding number 6 says the hardship was not created by the applicant, but by the unique characteristics of the property that create 3 separate mean low water points. Our respectful assertion is that we have exactly the same shore condition, and therefore we contend that we have a hardship under your regulations, as was previously found by the commission in the other projects. My last point has to do with the criteria under the variance, where it says the resource areas delineated will be better protected if the project is allowed than if the project is denied, or the project has an overriding public benefit. There are 2 separate tests here. The applicant only needs to meet 1. Nevertheless, we contend that we meet 2. And my personal philosophy of this is the following, that when a variance is granted, obviously one of the commission's criteria or regulations is allowed to be literally varied. And in consideration for that, the applicant has to show that the project will help the environment be better protected. And in our case, without being repetitive, it's all in the mitigation. It's in the design of the dock, as I mentioned earlier, the shellfish mitigation. As Mr. Ball mentioned, by allowing the dock, we're going to transform and get the foot traffic off of the bank and get all the human activity out to a point where there's 3 feet of water depth, bridging that sensitive marsh area. It's the invasive species eradication that's being proposed, and it's the buffer zone plants that are being proposed. So in summary, I think that we've made a case to the commission that a variance can be granted here. And I would respectfully suggest that similar variances have been granted in the past. Not that you're bound to follow those exactly, but I do suggest that it's guidance and that I'd ask the commission to look at that. And I think, did Mr. Messina want to say anything at this point, or do you want to wait till the question and answer period? You can unmute.
Wait, Brian, whatever you prefer.
All right, why don't we just open it up to questions and comments at this point? Mr. Chairman, we're available for questions and comments.
Oh, I thought you were chair. All right. Jen.
Well, the staff issued our staff report. We pretty much stand behind that. I'm struggling, Brian, how building a structure on the salt marsh protects it. So I think the biggest issue here is going to be the variance request. We are concerned about what's happening with that island of salt marsh over there. We read Mike Ball's letter, and although I agree with Mike, it's difficult to determine, what is actually causing this dieback of salt marshes. Something's happening over there, and something started happening over there in that little island of salt marsh when those other docks went in. So that's kind of concerning to us that this could be having impact on that salt marsh, because I can bring up an aerial photo and show another island of salt marsh over off of Eel River West that hasn't really changed in the last 20 years, and there are no more docks across that marsh. So we continue to be concerned with what's happening in that little pocket of salt marsh over there. I will say that I know you already stated it, but all the previous permits that were issued had existing structures, and I think at the time, and maybe some commissioners who made these decisions back then can speak to this, but I think they felt that the dilapidated conditions of those previous docks were contributing to an adverse effect to the marsh, and that to reconstruct those in kind was going to be more damaging to the marsh because it would have brought it right up closer to that salt marsh. So that's why the board allowed those other 3 docks to kind of jump that island of salt marsh. And the only other point I have to make is, so you're Brian, you said you were withdrawing the Phragmites removal at this time.
We're withdrawing it from this notice of intent because it requires the filing of this ecological restoration. It's kind of a new thing. We're still.
I know. I thought that, Mark. I thought they only required the ecological notice of intent, ecological restoration notice of intent if it was a certain square footage of Phragmites. I thought you could just file the appendix A, I think it's called, for a smaller Phragmites project.
Yes, they were. Since this was not required mitigation, we've in the past included Phragmites removal in other notice of intent as if the mitigation was like a calculation that's required to meet, a town bylaw or something like that. But they did, even at the 33 square feet, they were requiring in Appendix A, ecological restoration limited project, and we were just going to follow this filing to keep things separate with that Phragmites removal filing.
Because I think the limited project, you could file it with this. And you don't have to do that, the larger restoration, the ecological restoration notice of intent. Were you working with Callie over at DEP?
Correct.
Okay. Kind of confused by that, but all right.
Yes, the intent though is to definitely go through with that Phragmites removal in the appropriate filings.
Okay.
Right, so that's just a technical matter.
That's fine. No, I understand that. I was just curious why the limited, it wasn't that Appendix A, whatever, wasn't being filed with this. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, I think the staff report speaks for itself. And that's all I have at this point.
All right. Ms. Bergeron.
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner comments. Betsy, you're up.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, I actually have several comments on this. First, I'm going to address the points that Brian brought up. And to start out with a positive thing for you, Brian, I agree that this meets the rare and unusual case. That's why the other 3 projects were given variances. Having said that, this is different because the prior 3 lots would have been allowed to have docks. They had pre-existing docks that were dilapidated. They wanted to have a new dock. And as Jen said, there were 2 choices: either allow it, a reconstruction of the kind of dock that was there, or have something that would better protect the environment. And the key mitigating factor in those was that in the construction, all that prior dock was removed. And so there was a lot of material that was there. So when you talk about mitigation measures, that was the key mitigation measure for these projects. I have a question on your 3rd mitigation, and that is, did the House get a certificate of compliance with the additional mitigation? Is that what was filed with the state for the whatever it's called in Barnstable? Was there a certificate of compliance given on this house with the amount of mitigation that was there? Alyssa.
And that order of condition, I believe, is still open.
It is still open. We were in the process of addressing their certificate of compliance. We were assisting the homeowners in dealing with a water issue on the property, so it was still open. Initially, they were considering removing that excess mitigation just so that it would comply with what was required. And it looks like now they're willing to keep it if it can help as a mitigation measure for this project. So it's still open.
Okay, thanks. But I just don't feel that this meets the criteria for a variance. You can apply for it and it has a hardship, but the fact that the other 3 applications were basically to rebuild docks, and part of the mitigation was to remove the old docks, that was an overriding factor. The other thing about this that is different from the other docks that were put there is that in order to get to the 3 feet of water, the end of the dock is even more than 100 feet from, this is the outer part of the end of the dock, from the edge of the salt marsh. Whereas all the other docks that we have, it's 100 feet actually from the landward side of the salt marsh. But this is more than 100 feet from the outer side of the salt marsh. So I I think Mike's explanation and Jen's explanation, the staff's explanations were good, but the fact is, we don't know. We don't have the data as to what happened right at that area. But certainly, any kind of structures in the water is going to alter the water flow, which will alter how the shoreline reacts. It'll alter the sediment flow in that area. So that's all, Jamie.
All right. Courtney.
I'll preface my comments. This is the last meeting that we will have before Christmas. And of course, this is the time of giving. And quite often it's traditional that people put up stockings and Santa Claus fills them. And being the resident curmudgeon on this commission, it's my job to give out stocking stuffers to appropriate people. Now, the stocking stuffer I'm suggesting, which is coal, is by no means a reflection on this application. I should make that very clear. It's just that I do award this to deserving presenters on occasion. Anyway, that speech aside, Brian, I think the toughest thing you're going to have to deal with here is satisfying us on the variance request. And I agree with Betsy's comments on that. I won't add anything else because the rest of it's all, pretty well laid out.
All righty. Kevin.
I think I'd like to wait for the rest of the comments to come in before I make up my mind. I can't remember the last time I was more troubled about a decision on something like this. Just the mere fact of no matter what happens, it seems as though there'll be adverse consequences to the environment, either the use of no dock in accessing the water or the construction of the dock are going to cause adverse effects. And it's really troubling. That said, it's my job to figure it out and make a judgment. Thank you. I'll stop preaching.
All righty. Melissa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question, if I may, for, I don't know, the Messinas or Mr. Wall about hardship. Okay, Mr. Wall, in your letter, you argued about the hardship for not being able to have a dock there. And I mean, it's lovely that they get to be waterfront, but are either of the Messinas, do they make a living on the water? The commercial fishermen?
No.
I'm sorry, was that a no or a yes?
That was a
No.
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 but,
Okay.
yeah, I'm not sure that's part of your, there is a definition of hardship.
Yeah.
Would respectfully direct you to, because I think it's very important. I quote it in my memorandum. I'm just scrolling down till I get to it. It's in your definitions section, and it says the following: a hardship is the application of the wetlands bylaw to a particular piece of property, evaluated in its totality, owing to the unique characteristics of the property, that is unduly oppressive, arbitrary, or confiscatory, and it would involve substantial economic loss to the applicant because of literal enforcement of the bylaw. So what does that mean in English? It means to me that if you strictly enforce the 100-foot length requirement, which would then prevent the applicants from having a dock, it would be unduly oppressive or arbitrary because other docks have been granted in the area. And with the mitigation, our contention is the environment's adequately protected.
So I'm hearing the substantial economic loss bit, and being from the Outer Cape, where we have a lot of marshes but no docks, and a lot of fishermen who depend upon getting out to boats. They're fine getting in and out of boats out there. I do have a question, another question about this area. I mean, it's a lovely corner of the world. When I was out there, I noticed a mooring ball off the coastline there, right offshore, and there was a motorboat on it. Is that your mooring? Does that mooring belong to? Okay, so that's not your mooring. Okay, so somebody has a mooring though straight off your property there. That sure looked like that was within 200 feet of your property. That
No, it's a bit deceiving.
okay. So how far offshore is that mooring? Any idea?
Mark, was it noted in the plans, I believe? Because the harbor master noted that.
Yeah, because I don't actually have a copy of the new plan. I don't know why. I can't seem to find it. But.
From the proposed end of the end of the proposed dock, Melissa, one mooring is approximately 50 feet away, and the other mooring, it looks like it's 82 feet away to the other mooring.
Thanks.
And what typically happens is if the dock were allowed, the harbor master would move the mooring. The mooring would be moved at the direction of the harbor master.
Yeah, but I'm going to again defer to the comments of Commissioner Gladfelter, and also, you know, those neighboring properties had pre-existing docks, and they were allowed to be built because they were pre-existing docks. You know, some properties, some land just isn't conducive to it. I'm also concerned about, I mean, I know that the regulations say 3 feet at mean low tide, but 3.1 feet is not much clearance for anything. And, you know, all we need are a couple of moon tides or, a couple of moon tides, which we have regularly, or the spring tide. We'll find whatever vessels or whatever parts of the dock are out there floating, they'll be hitting the ground. So it's I'm troubled by the thought of adding a dock to the river. But neither of you are commercial fishermen though.
No.
Okay. Thanks.
No, and I guess we could just further elaborate on that, saying, you know, we have 3 young children that love to spend time outdoors just as much as we do. So we love to kayak, fish, etc. All of which we found out after purchasing the home, it's very difficult and nearly impossible to do off the embankment. So the property just with the low water depth and the embankment heading leading to the water. So for instance, if we go out kayaking and it's low tide, we're coming back and the tide is lower than expected. We can't always make it back to the property based on the embankment on the kayak. So we're kind of navigating through there. And the only boats I can say we currently own, you know, to your point about the mooring being, you know, potentially ours, we don't currently own any boats. We never have owned. The only boats that we own are kayaks and an inflatable boat with a small battery operated motor, but we don't have any boats. And
yeah, well, I can attest to the fact that over the years, you will get used to having the mucky silt at the bottom of the river in your feet. I hated it as a kid now. And I grew up as a water rat, walking in and out of gross water, but you'll get used to it. The kids will get used to it too. Sorry, I wish I could help you more, but thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought this was the longest, certainly the longest, and most specific response from staff in the report. It was, luckily my job allows me some amount of time to sit and read. So that was very useful because I had thought this solution was basically the only possibility. They're going to have a dock, it's going to have to be way out there because that's what you got to do to get to the water. And the other docks were similar in design. but I do listen very carefully to staff's comments and also to Mr. O'Brien's. So I guess I don't have any specific questions. So thank you for allowing me these comments.
Thanks, Steve. Mark, did you not say that there'd be float stops on that?
Correct. There will be.
All right. Jen?
I just wanted to add one comment, Jamie, and is that, you know, the board could always permit a small walkway down that embankment for the applicant to reach and be able to access the water. So the argument that the dock is the only way to protect the bank from being trampled on is incorrect. We could always approve a small walkway down to the water's edge. We've done that before.
Okay. But can't fault them for trying for everything. Mr. Wall?
Did you have any questions, Mr. Chairman? If not, I have if I could have a brief moment to make a couple of quick retort points.
Yes, sir.
So I'd like to pick up with what Jen said. I agree that there can be stairways permitted down banks or walkways, but it's more than the bank that's being affected. It's what Mrs. Messina just said. To get from the water's edge out to navigable waters, there's that whole peat shelf and salt marsh, and you're going to have people dragging kayaks and canoes and other things. So the whole idea was to get human activity from the upland over the marsh out to the water. Secondly, in preparation for the hearing today, it's not shown on the plan. We had a discussion about the fact that the salt marsh has become diminished, and it would be possible to bridge the marsh. If the commission were inclined to approve this, we might go back and try to strategically change the location of pilings to be able to bridge the remaining marsh so that there's no pilings whatsoever in the marsh. Thirdly, just to go back to a point that I made earlier, this is my particular personal view, but it's a professional view as a land use permitting attorney. When there's a variance, you get to have, you're asking the regulatory authority to give some relief, to bend the rule. In exchange for that, the commission can get things that ordinarily can't. So if this were, let's say, the house project, for instance, you run the numbers, the FW 1018 tells you the mitigation that's required. The applicant proposes that, and if they meet the requirements, they're supposed to get the permit. In a variance, there's some wiggle room. We're asking you for relief, and in exchange, you can ask us for all kinds of mitigation that the commission would not normally get. And that mitigation, there's been a lot of focus on salt marsh. But if you look at the regulations, it says all the resource areas. And so a couple of points. One, this is not a question of whether or not a dock could or cannot be in salt marsh. The commission routinely approves docks that span salt marsh. The question here is the extra length that's being required. And what you get in return for that extra length are the design standards, the shellfish mitigation, the Phragmites removal, and the extra buffer zone planting. And I think if you look at the totality of the project, you're getting a lot for the extra length. And then again, not to belabor the point, but there's going to be human activity there no matter what. And I think the environment would be better off with the dock than without. So I think there's a variance case here that has been made, and I would ask the commission to give it some very careful thought, which I know that you will. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen, is it the Phragmites piece is going to become under separate cover?
It's the Phragmites piece that would come under a separate cover. Yes.
Mr. Wall's point, if this is approved, you're saying we get the benefit of the Phragmites project, but we don't really have that within this application. Is that correct?
That's correct, but it's a technical matter. We are proposing it, and what I would suggest is the commission could simply put a condition that says we must file for and obtain and we can't do this project unless we get that other permit.
Okay. Trying to clarify, that's all. All right, we're gonna go around again, see who else has more comments. Please don't be repetitive, though. All right, I saw somebody's hand. Melissa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question perhaps for Jen or Alyssa, if I may, Mr. Chair. The legal counsel just mentioned that the question is all about the extra length required for this dock. And I'm sitting here thinking that the question is really if we permit a new dock in town. Am I mistaken in my thought processes there, Jen?
I'm not following you, Melissa. Repeat that.
The question, I mean, the legal counsel keeps saying that the question that we're dealing with is on the variance and about the extra length of the dock. And I'm sitting here thinking that, no, actually the question is, do we even permit a dock? Am I correct in, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking I'm getting confused now by the council.
No, I mean, the question is, do you permit this dock?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it's
that's the question.
That's question number one.
Yeah, I mean,
Question number two is if we permit the dock, then the question is the variance on the length.
Well, I think what Jen's saying is it's all in one.
It's all in one.
It's all in one. Okay.
Correct. I mean, this is an unusually long dock.
Yeah, it's quite
and it's
unusually long.
and as Betsy pointed out, or I think it was Betsy, it's not even over 100 feet from the landward edge of the salt marsh. It's 100 feet from that outer edge of salt marsh.
Yeah.
And that is not to bridge the salt marsh. That is to try to achieve the
3 feet of
required water depth.
Yeah.
To not trip as many provisions as possible.
Yeah.
So this isn't, this is one about jumping that marsh, but it's not only about that. It's about not achieving the water depth.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking. And then also, and then back to the Phragmites question. There really weren't many feet of Phragmites there, if I recall. It was sort of just a very small little
33 square feet.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Betsy.
You good?
Yeah, I must say the little I thought the concept of having the stairs going up and over the dock for public use. I saw it on the neighbor's dock and I just thought it was kind of silly because there really is no shoreline there either for people to walk on. Okay, I no more questions. Sorry, it was really a question about, are we just thinking about the extra length or, yeah, got it. Sorry.
Betsy?
I have a couple of comments. As with Brian, I want to just kind of wrap up and remind everybody that variances are, as all of you know who have been on, or even Melissa, you haven't been on for very long, but you've never seen a variance before. Variants are only to be issued in rare and unusual cases. And I understand where Brian's going, but I could see that if this variance were issued in this case, then we would see Brian back again on similar kinds of applications. And Melissa, many of them would be dock applications. And so I think in making a decision, everybody should keep that in mind. And the other comment, Mr. and Mrs. Messina, I'm sorry, and I understand your concern and wanting to have you and the kids having a lot of time in the water. That said, our decisions should not be made for whoever happens to be making the application at the time. The decisions we make are sort of how what the structure is going to be will be affecting the environment now and in the future. And so, yeah, I would urge you to, if this isn't permitted, to explore with Jen other possibilities to make it easier for you to access the water.
Thank you.
And that's all, Jamie.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? All right, Jen, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
Nothing in the public chat, Mr. Chairman. No.
Okay. Courtney?
Yeah, I think in light of the fact that we've had a bunch of discussion, I would like to ask Brian if he would not mind recapping briefly the essence of his variance request and the reason for it.
Happy to do that. I'll try to do it briefly. So I agree with what Jen said. The length is required to get to the depth that your regulations require. So we've asked for a variance from 10.116(1)(d)(1). There are 5 criteria for the variance. The first is that the project does not meet a performance standard. We're over the length requirement. The second is mitigation measures are proposed that will allow the project to be conditioned so as to contribute to the protection of the resource areas. And the arguments I've made there are that the design itself is aluminum gangways with fewer pilings than a timber pier, and that therefore contributes to reducing the impacts. Plus, we're proposing a contribution to the Shellfish Fund, which will enhance the shellfish resources and the water quality of the town. Thirdly, we're proposing 33 square feet of Phragmites removal. And fourth, we're proposing 532 square feet of mitigation plantings in the buffer zone, which, as I said earlier, advances your regulatory desire to have a naturally vegetated buffer zone. The third criteria is the project will not create a nuisance. I think that's kind of an obvious one. We don't think that it will. It seems that the focus of the commission is on the hardship argument and on the argument that the resources will be better protected with the project than without. So the hardship argument has to do with the shoreline configuration. We can't meet the requirements, and so we contend that the literal application of 100-foot length requirement causes a hardship because of the characteristics of the property. And I know there were some comments about the livelihood of my clients or what they intend to do. But as Betsy said, it's actually the hardship relates to the property itself. And we contend that there is a hardship here because of the unique, rare, and unusual circumstances that are present. And the commission has in fact found this exact shoreline to constitute a hardship in 3 prior instances. So finally, it comes down to, are the resource areas better protected with the project than without? And I know the commission seems to be focused kind of like a laser beam on the effects of the salt marsh. But A, we're gonna get over that salt marsh with the design, and B, we have all of that mitigation proposed. And when you look at the requirement in the regulation, it says the resource areas. So it's not just the salt marsh, but it's the buffer zone, it's the bank, it's the land under the ocean, it's the land containing shellfish, and all of our mitigation enhances all of those interests. So on balance, we believe that we've made a case on each one of the criteria sufficient for the board to exercise its discretion, because this is a discretionary matter. You may grant variances, you're not required to, but we think we've made a case where you may grant them comfortably in this case.
Thank you.
I think that's, you argue it well. Brian, you represent your client well. We may not ultimately agree with the decision that, or your point of view, but you argue well, so you won't get coal in their stocking.
Well, thank you, Courtney. I appreciate that. And Courtney, if I may, I've said this twice before, and I'm not going to be repetitive, Mr. Chairman, but this whole philosophy that I've been trying to address is that if you bend the rule a little bit, you get a lot in return. And your regulations allow us to come before you with this kind of argument. This isn't kind of a, you know, if it were a dock that complied with all the requirements, there'd be no mitigation, really. And I think that when you look at the mitigation that would be provided in this case, it's a good project, I think. So I leave it to the commission.
Thank you. Jen, I know it's been a few months since we opened this, but we have a DEP number?
We were just issued it, what, yesterday, Mark, or the day before?
Okay. So that was a valid question then.
It was. I think they were going back and forth with the DEP. Now I understand your comments, Mark, about the DEP wanting supplemental information. It had to do with the Phragmites.
Correct.
Yeah, so they do have a DEP number.
Okay.
Correct, Mark?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, it's 25-4813.
Yep.
All right. Mr. Do you have anything else from your team?
No, I have no further input.
All right. All right. Any other comments or questions? All right. What are you thinking, folks?
No comments in the chat?
Yeah.
I already asked that. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird, second.
Thank you. All right. We have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Last call, if there's nothing further.
No.
Voting. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Melissa,
Right, dog eye.
Steve.
And I.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Merry Christmas, happy holidays to everybody.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
You too, Brian.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll see you in 2023.
I hope so.
We do too.
All right, next up.
Excuse me, Jamie. Can I just request, General Alyssa, could you run off an extra copy of the newest plan for us, please, and just put it in my file? Because I don't seem to have the one that was submitted on the 12th, which was just 2 days ago, and for some reason it wasn't in my packet that I brought home.
Okay, we'll make
come
sure you
pick-
get it.
Thanks, I'll pick it up tomorrow or Friday.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. The next two have been previously continued. Next up, Ronald Simmons. Hammond Pond Parkway LLC, 14 Ridge Road, Falmouth, Mass. Permission to replace decking and to replace and relocate 2 float sections on an existing licensed pier. Ben?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have promoted Kelly Cardoza up to present her project and share her plan.
Right, and for the record, this hasn't been previously opened. Correct me if I'm wrong, so everyone's on the quorum.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commission members. My name is Kelly Durfee Cardoza for the applicant, Ron and Lisa Simons of 14 Ridge Road in North Falmouth. May I share my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, but I'm having a problem doing it.
Okay, I can grab it on my end. Kelly, it's just going to take me a minute to tap in.
Did you get it?
Oh,
Yes.
yes, we have.
Sometimes technology works. So the site is located on off of Wild Harbor Road. This is Ridge Road here, and this is Rand Beach Road. This is an existing dock at this location. The project is a notice of intent for the replacement of the 2 float sections that are attached here. The applicant purchased the property in 2019 and proposes to replace the existing floats and resurface the existing pier and ramp, which is currently in disrepair. The structure was constructed in the mid-60s according to a request for determination that was filed with the commission in 1990. And this commission issued a negative determination in October of 1990 for the pier. The proposed work includes the replacement of the float section licensed under Chapter 91. So prior to filing with the commission, Mr. Simons went to DEP and they approved a lateral expansion of the float, resulting in an additional 24 square feet of coverage. And this work was approved by DEP as a minor project modification. to the Chapter 91 license. Following that, Mr. Simons met with Jennifer, who requested he reduce the size of the float to 192 square feet to match existing conditions. We submitted this work under the notice of intent to the commission, to DEP, and to the Division of Marine Fisheries. DEP requested some additional information regarding the size of the two groin structures and whether or not we were intending to expand those. We confirmed that that was not the case and received a file number from them. Marine Fisheries issued an email to the commission on November 2nd, noting that there will be more than 3 feet of clearance at the end of the float during mean low water. And as such, they have no recommendations for sequencing, timing, or methods that would further avoid or minimize impact to the marine resources at this time. So the work includes removal of the existing float section here and installation of a new 5 feet 5 inch by 48 inch float section and a new 4 by 10 T at this location, both with foam encapsulated flotation, installation of 6 12-foot diameter piles and a bubbler, and decking on the existing ramp and the pier will be replaced with wood. The modifications will be completed by Schultz Marine, who prepared a cross-section, which was then submitted to the commission. Installation will be completed using a barge-mounted crane. The piles will be installed using a vibratory hammer, and we think the work will take about 2 weeks. We filed this as a limited project since the maintenance, repair, and improvement of the structure, including piers, which existed on November 1st of 1987, is allowed as a limited project under the Wetlands Protection Act. We're not proposing any expansion of the existing pier, and we don't believe that the work will have an adverse impact on land under the ocean. In addition, the project meets the requirements under the Falmouth Wetland Regulations, Coastal Docks and Piers, FWR 10.16. There's no winter storage proposed. There's no lighting, electrical, or potable water connections proposed. The proposed pier has not been increased in square footage. I will note that there is an electric line that will be trenched here to connect to Mr. Simon's home so that they will be able to power the bubbler. We anticipate that that work will be done and the area will be closed at the end of each day. So there'll be no issue with a rain event. And again, we think that that work can be conducted in a couple of days. It's not very long. Finally, the water depth at the end of the proposed pier will be a minimum of 3 feet. It's over 6 feet. So based on that, it's our opinion that the replacement of the float sections will not cause significant impact to the resources. And we believe that the work can be completed in compliance with the Wetlands Protection Act and with your Falmouth Wetlands bylaw. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Thank you. You can stop sharing at this time, thanks. Jen?
The only thing, Kelly, we need to clarify is all the work will take place by barge because we had an abutter reached out to us that was very concerned about construction access. So if you can just confirm that the work will be done by barge and that that Ben Carson will not be accessing the site via Ridge Road, that would be helpful.
I can
Thank you.
confirm that, yes.
Thank you.
And I'll make sure that Mr. Simons and Mr. Carson are well aware of that, but that is the intention.
I think their only concern was the construction access by their house. So we just want to clarify that for the record and in case said abutter is watching from home, that it will be done by a barge.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all I have. I think all the other issues I believe were addressed.
Ms. Bergeron?
Just to go off of Jen's comments, since we mentioned the trenching for the electrical line, will that work be done simultaneously as the barge is being constructed, or would they be done at 2 separate times?
I believe it'll be done at the same time.
Okay. Just trying to gauge a time frame there. So perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Kelly, did you not say that the electric exists now? No?
There is no electric at this point. And so he
Okay.
needs to install the bubbler. And he actually looked at a solar option, but I don't think it was fully reasonable. So we need to bring that electric line down.
Okay. And then you said there was no increase in square footage?
Correct.
Okay, what is the size of the existing float at the moment?
192 square feet.
Thank
What we
you.
did is we narrowed the straight extension so that he could get the T. And we reduced the length of it a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
That's why it's 5 feet, 5 inches, which is unusual, but makes it work.
Yeah. I thought you said that, but it tripped me up. I'll admit it. Kevin.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Maury.
Will there be any time of year restrictions, Jen, in this
No,
area?
DMF did not place any time of year restrictions on the specific dock reconstruction.
Thank you.
Good, Maury.
All set, thank you.
Okay. Melissa?
Yeah, thanks. I actually had two questions. One is along the lines of a time of year restriction, and it's not so much for the dock, but for the trenching, because there's an awful lot of wetland that's right along the trenching. I noticed that you've got the rolls that are going in between the road or the property line and the trench and the wetlands. But should we be concerned about time of year for, I don't know, crossing salamanders or other
No,
kinds of
I wouldn't be
wildlife?
too concerned in this area.
Okay. I wasn't sure about that. And then a question for the applicant. Do you have permission to trench across the road?
So it's a private road jointly owned by the nearby landowners, and he will seek that permission once he's got the order from you.
Okay. And then also, since you're narrowing the dock itself, will you be needing to rebore your holes or post holes to support it? Or are you just narrowing the actual planks?
We're just narrowing the actual planks.
Okay, so you're not redoing those. Great. And there'll be spacing, let light through?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. No more questions.
All right. Steve?
Chairman, I want to thank Jen for bringing up the neighbor's concern and make sure we mention that in our order of conditions. But I don't have any questions. Thank you for listening to us the last time.
Thank you. Betsy?
Nope, nice, clear, short presentation. No questions. Thanks.
We like it. Courtney?
No questions, no coal.
Thank
right.
you.
Life is good. All right.
That's the best
Jen, is there
Christmas
any
present ever.
public chat function, please?
Nothing in the public chat, Mr. Chairman.
You?
I'll
All right.
make a,
Any other comments or questions from the board? Kelly, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mark?
I'll
That's it.
make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to close the hearing. If there's nothing further, Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Harlow Hawks Eye.
Melissa?
Ragtag guy.
Steve?
That night.
It is unanimous. We have closed the hearing. Thank you, Ms. Cardoza.
Thank you very much.
Night.
Good night. Thank you.
All right. Next up, Lisa Maria Akuri, 3 Madeline Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to reconfigure the driveway, construct retaining walls, reconstruct the deck and front landing, construct 2 patios and a rent station, remove invasive species and prune trees. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am promoting Robert Dewar up to present the project for Bracken Engineering.
Okay, and I believe this was never open, so the quorum is
No.
everyone.
Correct.
Mr. Dewar, you were up, sir.
Good evening, everyone. I think I'm the last one, so I hope I don't get that cold. My name is Robert DeWar with Bracken Engineering here on behalf of Lisa and John Arcuri. We have a property here at 3 Madeline Drive. If it's okay, I'd like to share my screen.
Yes, sir.
And everybody see that okay?
Yes.
So here we have the existing conditions. We're at the corner of Bryan Lane and Madeline Road. To the north of us, we have a vacant parcel. I believe it's actually part of the layout of Bryan Lane and Muriel Lane to the north of us. And to the south, we have a single family dwelling. To the west, we have a, it's not shown on the plan effectively, but it is the end of the canal leading down to Eel Pond. And to the right, to the east, we have Madeline Road. The property currently lies entirely within the land subject to coastal storm flowage. Here we have the elevation 12 contour running through here. So it's only just this last corner here that's not within the flood zone. To the west, we have a bordering vegetated wetland here associated with that canal. That was delineated by Sebacia Incorporated. Moving here, we have a paved driveway that runs along the side of the northern side of the house. All the way around back, there's actually a drive under garage back here. And that has been there since I believe the house was constructed in 1972. So last year, Lisa and John purchased the house and they've begun trying to make some improvements to it. As part of those improvements, they do wish to do some work on the landscaping. Part of the issue is that historically water has run down Bryan Lane or past this catch basin and continued to run down the paved driveway all the way into the backyard directly into that bordering vegetated wetland. Since then, the town has provided a berm which has helped catch some of that stormwater to help that process. The Arcuris wish to construct a stone wall here at the coming off the corner of the driveway in the corner of the house. Remove all of the paved driveway along the northern side of the house in the rear of the yard and convert the front portion of the driveway to a pervious nature of the stone or crushed shell. Again, similarly, the existing brick walkway will be converted and relayed out and to be made pervious as well. In the back here, they do have an existing wooden deck and they wish to rebuild that in kind. No expansion of that. And then below that on the ground level, they do propose approximately 325 square feet of patio and walkway. This would be dry laid pavers. Ideally, they would be pervious. The intent is that they'd be pervious. And that would, even though that is grass there now, that does provide a reduction from 15 feet to a hardscape feature, being the existing pavement, to 36.8 feet. So quite a big improvement from impervious area to the wetland resource area. In addition, to help provide further a buffer between resource area and the rest of the yard, disturbed area, because this does all fall within both the zone A and B area. And it is very disturbed. This is all basically yard with trees. They are proposing a 3 foot wide by approximately 12 foot tall, a 12-inch tall planted berm that would provide both a physical barrier prevent any sort of creep, as well as assist in preventing any stormwater from running into the BVW. At this point, and also we do in replacing, once the pavement is removed, they are proposing some stepping stone walks with kind of some granite curbing steps along the side to carry the slope down and around to the backyard. With that said, I'd like to open up to the commission for any questions you may have. I will stop sharing my screen and bring us back.
Thank you, sir. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Robert, we put that there'll probably be 14 plants required for your restoration area.
I did see that, yep. And
Okay.
so that would be up in this invasive, on the northern property line. I forgot to mention that we are proposing some invasive species management up there.
Yeah. Okay. And our only other comment, technically this is moving closer than the present primary structure. Although I think the intent is to use that existing removing that existing pavement that's kind of integral to the house because that garage door is right there. So that's how they used to come down and come into the garage. Kind of a hard turn, but kind of reduce that and swap that pavement out for that little portion of patio at the end of the deck. And Robert, you did say it's just so the deck stairs have something to land on when they're coming off the deck. They have like a small landing area.
Correct. And then enough space to, put a grill down there so they're not grilling up on the deck.
Yeah. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Ms. Bergeron?
I have no comments at this time. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner comments, Maury?
I really like the berm idea. I think it's great. It'll keep a lot of the runoff out of the wetland. And it'll keep people out of it as well. Thank you. Nice project.
All right. Melissa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for the presentation. I'm looking at this proposed arborvitae row. Those don't strike me as being, in a zone A, no less. We tend not to approve of those. Thinking maybe something a little more appropriate to town or to native vegetation like cedars or something a little prettier. And then also, I noticed at the north end of the house, there's a suggestion for some hydrangeas, oak leaf hydrangeas. I'm not quite sure if those are the same hydrangeas. Jen, Alyssa, help me on this one. Are oak leaf hydrangeas normal hydrangeas? Or is it something that we usually?
There are species. Where are you seeing that, Melissa? I'm having.
If you look at the north of the house, there's on the planting schedule, the first thing is OH, 12 oak leaf hydrangeas, 5 gallon sides, 4 feet off center, and those are scheduled to go into the, I guess it's the north side of the house. Is that where they're going? Why am I thinking north side?
Yeah, 6 of them are along the north side of the house.
Basically next to where the new stepping stones would go.
Okay, technically, we would, Melissa, we would consider those foundation plantings. And I usually don't have a problem with hydrangeas as a foundation.
As a foundation planting, okay, but not in a mitigate, not as mitigation.
Not in a buffer zone or a mitigation area, but I have no problem with the use of hydrangeas as a foundation plantings.
Okay, that's good to know. How about the arborvitaes though? I know that we've had problems with those.
The board can discuss and we can switch that out for cedar.
Yeah, okay. That's really, that was my big concern. That was my big, plans. So thank you very much. Then no more questions. And thanks for ripping out the old driveway.
You're welcome.
Steve?
plan, no question. Thank you.
All right. Betsy?
I have no questions, thanks.
All right. Courtney?
I like the idea of swapping the thing, arborvitae, replacing them with cedar. Other than that, I think it's good, no coal.
Oh, he escaped.
All right. Kevin?
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
Nothing in the public chat function, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? Robert, do you have anything to add?
I think I just on the note of the arborvitaes, these were planted here, and I'm sure it's probably pretty evident just as a screening plant. The neighbor's house is fairly close, and this actually continues an existing row of arborvitaes that runs along the property line from maybe 10 feet back from the street line, down that property line. And these were just the idea being to continue those and have a continual screen in down just to block the view. I'll certainly, I'm sure that they'd be amenable to the cedars as long as we could find a cedar that's provided the screening that they wish. So that's all I have.
All right. All right. If there's no further questions or comment, Courtney?
In light of that explanation, I'm not hard and fast on the cedar. I think in that given situation, maybe just using arborvitae makes sense because you're continuing what you have.
Okay. All right. Anything else? All right. I'll entertain a motion.
I'm gonna have a motion to to close this hearing, take it under advisement.
Third, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to close the hearing. If there's nothing further. All right. Betsy?
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney?
Third eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carla Hawks Eye.
Melissa?
Fairchild Eye.
Steve?
No,
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Mr. Dewar.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night. Enjoy your
Merry
holidays.
Christmas.
Right, you too.
All right. Next up, request to amend an existing order of conditions has been previously continued. Continued hearings under an enforcement order has been previously continued. Which brings us to vote orders of conditions. First up, Jerry Brown, President, Sandpoint Shores Association, Inc., 0 Whitecaps Drive, Falmouth, Mass. This is the beach nourishment, right?
Correct.
The quorum is all of us.
Correct. This was last week, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just
Time flies.
no, I'm just trying to figure something out on my end before I start.
Is this the one that had extra stairs? Or was that the other one?
That was the other one.
This is
No,
one
this
we're
is the
gonna
one where they
convey.
have to take off the I think it's like a chain link fence and prune some branches. They're gonna be bringing in the
Over a ramp or something?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Very about the only thing I have is protect a 3-inch oak sapling.
Oh, yes, that's right.
That's all I had.
Pretty cut and dry project.
Yeah. And I think that was closer to the shoreline.
by the
Or was that the
ramp.
one up on the
By the platform.
by the
Yeah.
platform?
Yeah.
Okay. Platform. Okay.
Mhm.
So it's just beach
Do you have
nourishment.
Anybody have anything they want to see in there?
Just
That
the
oak tree
normal.
was mine.
yeah, we'll make sure it's like as compatible as it can be. For not being a real beach. So shocking. But you know, compatible grain size to the best of their ability, and in this area, it's going to be kind of tough. And we'll tighten up the construction, how they're going to get the sand to the beach, and I think they said they're going to just spread it by hand, so they're not going to have a machine on the beach. So we'll make that a requirement. Okay.
All right.
I move we accept the order of conditions for 0 Whitecaps Drive beach nourishment as discussed.
Third, second.
That was Fry Talk moving.
All right. We have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions as discussed. If there's nothing further. All right, Betsy.
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney.
Third, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin.
O'Brien, aye.
Maury.
Carlo Hawks Eye.
Melissa.
Fry Talk, aye.
Steve.
And I,
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, Richard and Catherine Rosa, 76 Dale Drive, Falmouth, Mass. This is
They're removing the front porch, constructing an addition, they're expanding the deck and access steps, and proposing 30 square feet of mitigation. What I have is remove proposed tree near deck. They have one like right near the deck, which they're trying to address the tree cutting, and we just don't think that's a great area for the tree. It's going to be in their view corridor. It's going to be too close to the deck. So
Did we want them to remove it or do we want them to move it to a different place?
staff would be fine with just removing it altogether, but if the board wants us to relocate it to a different spot on the lot, we can do that as well.
Because I think that was mitigation for trees that had been cut down.
Correct. And then Maury had said they use smaller trees than they had proposed because the root balls going into that bank was going to be pretty damaging. Correct, Maury?
Correct. And very, very difficult to.
So what size would you propose, Maury?
I mean, if they were talking 2.5 inch caliper, I would say, you know, you're probably, 15 gallon.
Okay.
They're much, they do much better.
Okay. And does the board want all 4 of the proposed trees and then just relocate the one from near the deck, or are you fine with 3, or do you want 4?
Put 4 in there, starting out as small trees.
Okay, so won't we move, we're gonna relocate the one from the proposed deck, near the proposed deck. Okay. And the only other thing I have is mitigate for the shed.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, I couldn't remember if this should have been permitted or not. So it had not been permitted, I take it.
And I think I looked this up at the last time.
Yeah.
Is that
2002, is it, or 4?
Yeah, 2001, something like that.
Jen, I have some time between 01 and 05. I think that's what you said last time.
okay, hang on. It's not there in 2001. It's there in 2005. We couldn't find a permit for it. What would you like to do? To mitigate for it, it would be
What's the size of the shed?
Like 12 by 8.
How much?
126 square feet.
So it would not have needed a building permit.
Right.
No, back then, anything over 100 square feet. And then it wasn't until the, maybe late. When it's only been a few years that a 200 square foot shed didn't need a permit. It had to be under 100 square feet.
All right,
Yes, it's
for a
substantial.
building permit, not for conservation.
You always need our permission for that.
Yeah, it's in an A zone or a B zone. It's
The
actually on
old
a
shed
coastal
was
bank.
96 square feet.
Yeah, so they need to give us a couple hundred square feet of mitigation.
So you want a 3-to-1 mitigation for the shed? They may not have the room on.
I was gonna say, I don't think they have enough room in their lawn.
Maybe they could add another small little baby oak down there.
Yeah,
There are a lot of stumps down there.
Yeah, there are a lot of
Yeah.
A lot of
cut.
substantial
So-
stumps.
Yeah,
So.
But it
maybe
would say eight trees the size Maury said.
15
and-
gallon.
4 of them were for mitigation for this.
and they can put them anywhere or just on the slope.
We'd have to make sure.
I
there was
mean,
enough
they
room on the
have
slope.
some room on the sides of the house that they could put some mitigation.
It's not
Um,
much.
Where it says timber retaining wall.
No, I'm talking about where it says edge of lawn on the east side of the house.
Where they already are proposing some.
Are they proposing? I don't think
Yeah.
they're proposing
The little
anything.
green
little-
dot there.
Oh, yeah, over there. Yeah, add to that.
Add to that.
Yeah,
So let's
And then
add to that and still add some trees.
okay.
Because there's no way that we're gonna get, 300 square feet of mitigation on that yard.
No, I don't think we are. What was that area? That
2
was
by
gonna
10.
be
3 by 10. 30
Yeah.
square feet.
So how much square footage do you want to see for mitigation shrubs?
They don't really have a lot of room.
They don't have a lot of room. And
Then it's
back
gonna be
between
up to
2001 and 2005, your regulations were slightly different.
How about
Is there enough room for them to just double what they were doing
Oh, yeah, definitely.
and then add a couple of trees into the forest? I mean, it'd be 30 feet and then a couple of trees instead of, what would it have been, 300 feet?
300
Would be
square
close to be like over 350 square feet.
because that shed's 126 square feet.
Yeah, yeah.
But even if we did that 2-to-1, that's 250 square feet.
Yeah.
So,
I'm okay with a couple extra trees. Just to be clear on those trees though, that the one you're talking about taking down by the deck, move it, so, but move it, or they could just replace it, correct?
Yes, we're gonna relocate it.
it doesn't exist yet, Jamie. That's one of their mitigation.
That's one of their proposed trees.
Because they had taken down trees in the forest. There were all kinds of freshly sawn stumps on the way down to the river.
I mean, they didn't even have a permit for the path. And whatever happened with the association, did they have to submit a letter to use the?
Oh, yeah, you wanted them to submit a letter from the association.
Have they done that yet?
No.
No.
They probably don't have one. They probably just cut the path
That's gonna be
right
enough.
onto association property and got right over to the water.
That path has probably been there longer than they've owned the place.
Most
No.
likely. Okay. So double the mitigation that they say, add more trees, submit a letter from that and relocate that one tree. Got it.
Should we double the mitigation and double the trees? So that's for your,
Is there enough room? Alyssa, you went out there. Is there enough room to add 8 trees out there? It's pretty.
small one?
Considering the canopy, I'm really not sure.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's what I'd be concerned about is the canopy.
Well, then maybe we
There-
should,
And there is an understory. I mean, ordinarily, should they have come to us beforehand, we would have allowed the trees to come down, but obviously they did not. Because they do have a number out there. But we could meet out there, see if any more can fit, or at least move them, proposed trees closer to the house. elsewhere on the property.
Since we want
don't think-
mitigation planting, possibly just add more, I don't know, at the end of story, I haven't been down there, that they could just add more shrubbery down there. But I haven't been there. I think we should just let Alyssa figure out what.
Well, we'll figure it out. We will figure it out.
But we need to mitigate for that shed somehow.
Understood.
Feet to the fire, Jen, feet to the fire, okay? Do I get cold too, Courtney?
All right, so we clear on that?
I have double the mitigation. That's what someone said. So that's
Double the
60
mitigation, 4 trees, correct?
Melissa,
on it.
Melissa, you're going to become the assistant curmudgeon.
I'm going to make a motion to accept this, to issue an order of conditions as discussed.
God bless you.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. Is there any further questions or comments? All right. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Third eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawk's eye.
Melissa,
Right, guy.
Steve.
And I,
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Thank you, everyone. Before we go to the next item, there's no meetings for the next 2 weeks. We need to come up with a special meeting for order of conditions, what we closed tonight. And Merry Christmas to all.
To all a good night.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
So guys, next week, who is available either the morning of Tuesday or Wednesday, even Thursday morning to vote orders of conditions?
I can do any of it.
Any of them.
Yeah.
I'm not available Tuesday and Thursday
Tuesday and Thursday. Okay, how
at
about,
8.
what was that, Bets?
At 8. I'm available after 9.
You're available after 9 on Tuesday and Thursdays.
Mhm.
So why don't we aim for Wednesday? Because I know most people work. Steve, you had your hand raised. Do you have a problem with Wednesday morning?
no, I said I would try to be available. I may be in a classroom, but I can listen and vote.
Okay. Okay.
That's
You wanna
civics
do-
in action, Steve.
Steve, where do you teach?
Guys, can I just get this meeting down?
Falmouth High School.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So December 21st at what time, Jamie?
Well, you know me, I'd rather do earlier than late, but
Yeah.
leave it up to everybody else. 8
8
o'clock?
o'clock.
8 o'clock works. So we will schedule a meeting to vote orders of conditions on December 21st at 8 a.m.
Zoom.
on Zoom.
Oh, it's a
Alright.
dark day, folks. What is it? 8 a.m.?
8 a.m.
All right.
And with that, Merry Christmas, guys.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
And watch for the meteor showers tonight around 10:30.
Yeah.
Geminoid.
Yeah.
Did Kristen know about the fudge?
No cold for anybody on the commission.
Yeah.
I wanted coal.
I want a quarter
Get you
one.
some, Jamie.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Motion to adjourn?
Harlow Hawk second.
Gladfelter, aye.
Third eye. Matthews, aye.
We can't hear you, Jamie.
Matthews, aye.
O'Brien, aye.
Harlow Hawk's eye.
Right, guy.
And I.
Good night, guys. Merry
Yeah.
Christmas.
See y'all next year,
Friday.
folks, or
No,
next
we'll
week.
say Merry Christmas on the 21st.